to all the Web3 enthusiasts out there. This is Max speaking, and welcome to the new exciting episode of Synopsis. Today I'm hosting this one with Mark Rydon, co-founder of Aethir. And as it's been said in the movie, oh, hi, Mark. How's it going?
Hey, it's good, Max. How are you? Thanks for having me.
All good, all good. Thanks for asking. Today we're going to speak a lot about DePIN, and I have a real bunch of questions prepared. And if you don't mind, let's get straight to the actions, shooting them one by one.
Sounds good.
Let's begin with some intro to warm up and to make our audience a little bit closer to you. So could you please go ahead and tell us how and why you joined the Web3 industry? What was your personal path?
Excuse me. Yeah, great question. I mean, maybe a slightly non-traditional path. I started my career in oil and gas, building big infrastructure projects in very remote places, middle of the desert, middle of the ocean. Spent a lot of time kind of flying into, very crazy environments. I spent a couple of years out on vessels and oil rigs. It was a pretty wild period, but very, very exciting for a young person interested in engineering and project management. At the time, I was kind of very casually interested in the crypto space, mostly just through mainstream adoption, Bitcoin and things like that. But after a couple of years in that space, started my entrepreneurial journey, moved to China, founded my first company. It was a biotech company. Worked on that for a couple of years before wanting to do something in the infrastructure space again. And it very much became apparent to me and my co-founder that some of the technologies that were being developed in the crypto space, particularly those exhibited by the early DePINs like Filecoin and Helium, were ones that we thought could really interact well and solve some of the problems that we wanted to solve with our company, Aethir, in the very, very early days. So that was really the journey. I mean, I wish I could say that I came to crypto because I just had this deep philosophical resonance with the narrative. But actually, for me, it was much more from a practical perspective. There was this technology that was just perfect to solve a problem that I had within our company. And it made a lot of sense to build technically in that direction.
Awesome. So thanks for sharing a really interesting background you have. And speaking about solving the problems, let's take a deeper dive to what been behind building the Aethir. So could you please tell us what unaddressed pain points pushed you to start Aethir rather than build on a traditional cloud marketplace like AWS and Nvidia DGX?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think it all boils down to the problem that we were solving in the very early days, right? And that was this idea of taking cloud gaming as a technology and distributing it to the parts of the world where people would need it most. So cloud gaming is where you allow a user to play any game on any device, right? We all know that if you want to play the best game nowadays, you need the best computer or the best phone or the best console, right? And it's very, very expensive to do that. Most gamers can't afford it, right? Cloud gaming actually allows you to take the game and instead of installing it on the computer, install it on the cloud. And then the cloud powers the game. Now, what's really interesting about that technology is that there's a huge market opportunity, right? Because the vast majority of gamers don't have top-end PCs or the best console. And all of these big gaming companies would love to access that gaming market, but they can't do it. And on top of that, the infrastructure that we have out there, this cloud infrastructure, is not designed for this type of compute, right? It's very CPU focused, very storage focused, very kind of enterprise software stack focused. Whereas cloud gaming is very much about high performance GPUs, creating this kind of data heavy tunnel between their resources and the gamer, right? It's also not about fractionalizing that compute across a number of different servers. It's very much kind of one-to-one. And this unique architecture requirement for cloud gaming meant that first of all, we couldn't just scale on the back of traditional cloud, right? It was just far too expensive. It would not be possible to do on AWS or Google Cloud, for example. That's why, even though Google invented the technology, they shut down Google Stadia, because even on their own infrastructure as a multi-billion-dollar company, they couldn't afford to scale their own technology on their own cloud stack, right? So we had to build something new. And secondly, because of that cost, we thought that, and it ended up being true, we thought that if we could scale this on the back of infrastructure that we didn't own, this kind of decentralized model, the DePIN model, then we could make some really interesting unit economics savings, take advantage of the difference in unit economics, and scale something that would actually bring us this incredible technology to the places where the users could benefit most. So that was really the initial direction we took. And then once that product was out in the market and people were seeing, hey, Aethir has this really cool GPU cloud that does all of this gaming stuff, this was 3 and a bit years ago, people started to hit us up. They're like, hey, you have GPUs? Have you heard about this AI thing that's starting to like warm up, pre-ChatGPT? And we're like, tell us more. And we found a really interesting use case for our GPUs and started to slowly build out a product in the AI space. And now, to be honest, that's the vast majority of where our revenue comes from.
Well, thanks for sharing. And so it started really from the pain points of the gamers, and I can actually 100% agree with this. For example, in the CIS region, we have a renaissance of PC gaming clubs. I mean, the real physical, but of course, the scale is not compared with what you are building. And it's great to see how it evolved over time. And of course, we'll speak a little bit later about the utilizations of these computing powers. And for now, could you please tell us how is Aethir different from marketplaces like Akash, IO.net, or Render, or others? What puts you aside?
Yeah, again, really good question, because there are a couple of GPU clouds out there in the space now, particularly on the Web3 side. And we get asked this quite a bit, but there's actually a lot of differences. So first of all, the main difference between Aethir and Render, right? And Render is probably the most popular one. A lot of people know Render. It's been around for a while. Render aggregates GPUs, predominantly consumer GPUs, right? So your gaming PC or your gaming laptop, anything that has a relatively powerful GPU, you can contribute that to Render Network. And then they will actually take portions of that GPU compute and then conduct rendering tasks, usually for CGI type products, like rendering images or rendering videos for movies, things like that. That's the core focus of Render Network. That's why their name is Render. So the big difference there is they don't really do AI stuff, and they aggregate a different type of GPU. They aggregate gaming GPUs, but they were the absolute first one in the crypto space to start aggregating GPUs, and a lot of respect for them in particular. Akash, another great example of a company that was around for a period of time before Aethir started to surface. What I love about Akash is, first of all, they're fully open source. So really, really strong vision that their founder has for what he hopes to provide the broader GPU community, right? But philosophically, they slightly differ from us, right? So they are very much on a spectrum, far more decentralized, right? They want to provide permissionless access to these GPUs, and it's resulted in a stack that is very, very interesting for crypto natives, right? But a little bit more difficult to access if you're a Web2 company, for example, or a corporate or an enterprise. Not necessarily something that you can come into as a traditional company and have a contract and create SLAs and create an enterprise relationship with the cloud. So I love what Akash have built, but they're taking a little bit more of a decentralized approach, whereas Aether is much more about serving enterprise customers. That's why our revenue is as high as it is. IO, big difference between us and IO was that IO was built on the back of, again, aggregating MacBooks and laptops and gaming PCs. The vast majority of enterprise compute on Akash is actually provided by Aether, right? So we actually give a lot of infrastructure to IO and provide a lot of their enterprise grade compute. So again, big fan of IO. Big difference there is that they aggregate predominantly a different type of infrastructure to Aether. Aether, best way to think about us is we aggregate only enterprise grade GPUs. So only stuff that sits in data centers, only GPUs that the biggest tech companies in the world want. And we make those GPUs accessible in a way that the biggest tech companies in the world can use it. No funny business with Web3, no, nothing that puts them off. This is kind of, in a sense, one of the boring things about Aether. We built ourselves to be enterprise focused, and that's, given us the ability to take advantage of kind of the cool things that crypto and the blockchain can do, but also use it to serve some of the biggest companies in the world.
Wow, awesome. So thanks for clarifying, and you deal perfectly with this question, put everything in order, and now we see the difference even from the philosophical perspective. So that's cool. And since we have a kind of an introductory episode today, we already started creating this image for our viewers, and there will be several questions from different spheres, so don't be surprised. And one of them is the next one. So let's speak about the credit card and this innovation. Could you please tell us what demand do you expect for the world's first DePIN credit card by Aethir and Credible Finance?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm just a big fan of these two worlds colliding, right? I think you and I are probably very similar in the sense that, we've got a bunch of wallets sitting there online. You might forget you've got a couple of $100 here, you got a couple of $100 there. And more often than not, you'll find a little kind of acorn that you squirreled away at a previous time, and you'll just put it on some silly meme coin or something, right? Because there's no real, it almost becomes funny money in a sense, monopoly money, right? You don't treat it like something that can pay your bills or something that can actually be used in the real world. And what I've found, having a credit card that's attached to a crypto wallet, it's a great way to just remember that's money that's useful. That's not just something that goes into the online casino. That is money that I should be putting on my card to use in the real world. So I love it. I just think that it adds so much utility. I think it's a little bit of a mindset shift for people as well. It reminds them that this currency that they're playing with in the crypto casino actually has real world value, right? And you can take that money instead of reinvesting it or putting it in something crazy, and you can go and have a nice dinner with your girlfriend or your wife, right? So again, big supporter of this. I'm very, very happy that Aether was able to partner with Credible Finance to get a card out there. And I hope it helps people navigate the wild, wild west that is the broader crypto landscape.
Well, sounds awesome. And it's also cool when you can afford just forgetting about several hundreds of bucks. That's that's good for showing your wealth. And what I can say about myself is also I'm often missing some money, not just in several wallets, but within one wallet, but across different chains. Thanks God there are some solutions for that. And what you say sounds really exciting. Awesome. And we're moving on to the next question. So it's not connected with the previous one, but got to deal with it. So do you think there is a need to make Web3 computation and storage resources decentralized as opposed to distributed? Kind of a philosophical, maybe.
Yeah, this is a cool question as well, right? Because distribution is actually one of the really big advantages of decentralization, right? So if you take a look at how the compute market has been affected by this AI boom, right? You've got a small number of very, very big and powerful and rich tech companies, right? They effectively have unlimited money and unlimited appetite for GPUs because they know the more money they have, the more GPUs they can buy, the faster they can train these really powerful models. Now, what this also means is that where those particular companies want the GPUs is dictated by them, right? So by having a lack of decentralized ownership of these GPUs, having it centralized through a small number of very powerful companies, you actually end up having distribution constrained as well, where almost all of the GPUs end up in effectively the US on the east or the west coast. And then if you're not one of these big companies, you're supply constrained, right? It's very difficult for you to actually go out there and get access to these GPUs. Anywhere from 40 to 52 weeks of delay on accessing this type of compute. There's on average anywhere from 6 to 10 times more demand than supply for this infrastructure out there in the market at any one time. It's really difficult, and that's largely because we have such centralization of resources and control over this critical infrastructure. A great example of this is CoreWeave, right? They actually did the biggest IPO since 2021. Raised about $1.5 billion in their IPO, a market cap of around 23 billion. A couple of months later, they're sitting at around 43 billion now. So even if you bought at the IPO, you'd be up kind of 2x. Anyway, they have 250,000 GPUs. And until literally just a couple of months ago, all of their GPUs were in the US, right? They've spent $8 billion on GPUs, and $8 billion of those was spent on US infrastructure. And there's AI companies all over the world. And they need access to GPUs that are not just in the US. So to be honest, the decentralization and distribution kind of challenge are a little bit interlinked and something that pretty passionate about.
Got it. Thank you. And even if I can imagine like something like unlimited money, I can also imagine the limits the computing powers of GPUs have. So the next question is about the demand and dealing with it. So Mark, do you think that since, as we mentioned in the beginning, the demand for the compute rises exponentially, the chip output seems to be limited. What will Aethir do when there is no more spare compute left? So do you have something?
Yeah, good. Yeah, we absolutely. And this is an interesting problem, right? This idea that demand for compute is rising exponentially, and we see this because the scaling laws that we see surrounding AI, right? This idea that it's effectively a linear relationship between how much data you have, how much compute you have, and how quickly you can train a more intelligent model, right? As you add more GPUs, as you add more data, intelligence kind of just goes up in this straight line. And these models, as they're being released, are increasingly just following this trend, right? We're not seeing a deviation from this line. So what that effectively means is that if we want to continue on this path, we need to kind of keep adding exponentially more GPUs. But supply from Nvidia is not increasing exponentially alongside that demand. Performance of these GPUs are not improving exponentially alongside that demand. So there seems to be a little bit of a gap. Now, on the surface, you might think that might be bad for Aethir, but actually it's the opposite. It's actually really good for Aethir. Now, the reason is because Aethir benefits from inefficiency in the market, right? So think about all these GPUs that are out there deployed into data centers. The GPUs that are underutilized or inefficiently managed are effectively burning a hole in that company's pocket. No one likes having an expensive resource that you're not using effectively, right? Now, as the supply crunch continues, right, as demand for this stuff increases, prices will go up, right? So the opportunity cost of holding that equipment idle also increases, right? Because these guys, these CFOs, they'll think, oh, I've got this like 10 GPUs that sit here that I don't use. If I plug them into Aethir, I can be earning, $100,000 a year. So instead of it being a liability, it's a benefit. Now, no matter how much demand is in the market, no matter how much supply is limited, humans are imperfect. The market is imperfect. There will always be inefficiency, no matter what. We will never have a perfectly managed resource, right? Which means there will always be a place for Aethir, and effectively, it'll just be better for Aethir, right? Because the resources that are then available will be more and more expensive. So Aethir will be able to more effectively provide kind of some price arbitrage and create interest on that supply. So yeah, that would be a good outcome for us, and something that we're very, very able to take advantage of, and that's what we do right now.
Wow, sounds great. I like how you turned this question about kind of a threat into the question about opportunities, and it seems like you are well prepared for everything. And as of today, we have not reached those compute limits, and you mentioned the question of effective usage of computing powers. So can you tell us, do you track how much compute on the platform is idle for now, and what do you do to increase its utilization and effective usage?
Yeah, so actually, if you think of if your resource is GPUs, and your revenue stream is people renting those GPUs, then the number one KPI that you have as an ecosystem is utilization, right? It's kind of like a hotel, right? A hotel lives and dies on what percentage of their rooms are occupied at any one time. If you have a hotel with only 50% occupancy, that's not a hotel that's going to be in operation for very long. They sit at an occupancy rate of 90-something% every day. And it's the job of that manager of that hotel to ensure that occupancy continues. Excuse me. And it's the same with a cloud. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do it. Obviously, having great brand recognition in the market, having trust established between yourself and your customers, having a great sales team and a BD team. All of those things are really, really critical. To be honest, at Aethir, we have an added level of management that we need to oversee, considering we don't buy the GPUs ourselves, right? If you're buying the GPUs yourself, you kind of have a P&L. You have to know how much money you have and how much you can deploy to purchase GPUs. So you have a very kind of like controlled curve that you're either able or not able to maintain. For us, we could onboard 100,000 GPUs tomorrow, right? And if we did that, our effective utilization of the network would just take a big dump. right? Because just because we doubled the number of GPUs in our ecosystem doesn't necessarily mean we can double demand overnight. So what we have is kind of this system where we onboard GPUs in line with demand. So we like to think of ourselves as a demand-led ecosystem. A supply-led ecosystem, right? Where we control how much supply we let in, but we keep demand in pace with that supply. One of the key risks you have as a DePIN, particularly one like Aether, is that if you don't control supply effectively and you have token reward mechanisms attached to supply in your network, you can actually create an environment where you really drain those rewards too quickly within your ecosystem. And that doesn't benefit you, it doesn't benefit the providers of the infrastructure in your network, and it doesn't benefit your investors and your holders either. So we have a really strong opinion on utilization within our network, and we manage it largely by being very supply-led, but keeping demand in touch with supply as we grow.
Awesome. So now we have, I would say, a pretty deep enough, but still general image of what you are doing, of your approaches, and of course, speaking about some products is impossible without discussing its users and customers. So several questions about them. So the first one will be a little bit technical. Could you tell us what mechanisms does Aether adapt to make sure a renter and a provider fulfill their obligations?
Yeah, sure. So like most DePINs, we have a staking requirement for anyone that wants to contribute hardware, or in our case, GPUs to the network. When you visit a hotel, for example, and you book a room, the hotel asks you to put a little deposit down, right? Because they want to make sure that if you misbehave or you take something from the minibar, right, they have a way to charge you without any trouble, right? And if you behave, they give you that deposit back when you leave. DePINs are very, very similar. We want to reward you for joining the network, but we need to take a small deposit first, just in case you are naughty inside our ecosystem, right? I would say 99% of participants are obviously going to behave very, very well, but you do need to manage for these scenarios where there may be a bad actor. So the first way that we kind of manage and ensure that compute providers adhere to their obligations is by having a deposit for them, right? They know that if they behave well, they get the deposit back on top of all of the extra rewards that they earn for having their equipment utilized within our network. So that's the primary, I would say, functional mechanism. More broadly, I think one of the best ways to ensure that your infrastructure contributors within the network adhere to their obligations is actually by giving them really clear long-term visibility of why participating is beneficial, right? Long-term visibility of the rewards and the upside for participating in the network. It's very easy to say, hey, we've got this one airdrop coming next month, like get excited about it. But actually you should be showing them, well, what about 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 3 years from now, right? A lot of these infrastructure providers, particularly the ones that are providing commercial infrastructure, they're not thinking 1, 2 months. They're thinking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And you need to match your reward horizons with their expectations. And I think creating alignment between the reward structures in your network and the way that they operate their timelines is also very, very important to make sure there's obligation alignment. And then finally, in Aether's network, we have what are called checkers, right? So you may remember Aether did a really big node sale last year, raised about 150 million. That was on the back of distributing checker licenses. And this is effectively a decentralized police force within the network. And it has, I think, 70,000 different nodes out there in operation, constantly checking things in the network. Okay, you say you are an H100 GPU. Are you actually an H100 GPU? You say you did this work. Did you actually do this work? You say you didn't get paid. Did you actually not get paid? You say you did get paid. Did you actually get paid? All of these different things done by the checker. And actually, they're not run by Aether. They're run by the community. Now, what that means is we have this decentralized trust, right? Where everyone that joins the network knows that they're going to be rewarded for what they do well, and they're going to be caught if they do something naughty. So they don't even need to trust Aether anymore. They can trust the fact that there is this big decentralized army of little policemen running around the network, making sure that the network will do what it says it's going to do, and that they'll get the rewards. So it's about building trust too.
Wow, just wow. So detailed. Thank you, and sounds really amazing. And continuing this topic about the customers, which of Aethir's customer segments is scaling the fastest of all?
Yeah, so Aether has, I guess, four main customer buckets, right? We have cloud gaming, right? So this is distribution of gaming resources to users who want instant play on any device, right? We have the kind of the cloud phone initiative, which is quite popular with a number of different institutions. We have our AI workloads, which fall into kind of two separate buckets. One is for training, and one is for inference. So training is the process of taking ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4, ChatGPT 4 to ChatGPT 5. So improvements in the quality of AI, that's training. Inference is actually when you speak to the AI directly. So when AI does a job. So once the AI is trained and you have a user that asks it a question, that process, every time you get a response from AI, that actually costs some time on a GPU somewhere, right? That's why you pay a subscription to cover these GPU costs. Anyway, what we've seen over the last 6 months, and I think you would be very familiar with this, is so many cool new AI products coming out, right? More agents, more powerful models, more startups doing AI-related things. In the beginning, it felt like there were just 5 big companies, and only 5 big companies could do AI stuff. Now it feels like even if you're a small, 2-person team, building in Australia, you can do something cool. So we're seeing a huge amount of growth in the AI inferencing side. That's agents, AI applications, people building stuff that is B2C, right? Direct to consumer, which is really, really cool because it means that you get so much more exciting stuff. It's like calendar agents and video AI and all this other really, really fun stuff that is just really kind of cool to see.
Yeah, the growth of the AI segment is crazy, and no need for my comments on here. You said everything, completely agree. And of course, it will be very interesting to know at least one amazing use case from the real life. So could you please tell us what is the most exciting story of how Aether made a difference for a company or a creator using your product that you've came across?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to single kind of one story or example out because there's been quite a few.
Okay.
What I'll do instead is I'll share one that was quite recent, right? So if you're on Aethir's Twitter, you'll see that we have recently been talking about a project called Everlyn, right? So Everlyn is a video AI model, right? They were recently retweeted and shouted out by Jan LeCun, right? Who's the chief AI scientist at Facebook, at Meta, right? One of the most established AI scientists in the world. Anyway, he shouted them out. He's like, hey, my friends are building this great video AI model called Everlyn. And Aethir was one of the very first investors in Everlyn, right? They've been building on Aethir's GPUs from the beginning. And, I as a founder myself, if you can save money on your core expenditures, and in their case, that is compute, that gives you an advantage. So being able to kind of work with them, optimize their GPU capacity, make sure that they were getting the best possible deal to train this incredible model, has put them in a situation now where they have one of the most interesting AI models out there. It is, magnitudes faster, right? So for example, if you go on to Google VO, right, very, 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 very cool video generation model, right? But if you want to generate a 10-second video, it might take 5 minutes to create the video, right? So if you can imagine, if you're a user, you don't want to sit there waiting 5 minutes every time you create a video. Only power users are willing to kind of sit there and wait out if they have to generate like 10, 20 different videos, right? Everlyn can generate a 10-second video in around 10 seconds. So it's almost real time, right? Which is pretty incredible. That alone, I think, is mind-blowing. But what you have to remember is on top of that, remember I said before, inference is time spent on GPUs. So that video that's being produced by Google VO, that takes 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes of GPU time. Whereas Everlyn is producing that 10-second video in 10 seconds. So it only needs 10 seconds of GPU time. So think about how much cheaper that is. Not only is it a better user experience, right? But it is, I don't know what factor cheaper as a result of the fact that it's just able to get on and off those GPUs just instantaneously, as opposed to 5-6 minutes for a 10-second long clip. So big fan of what they're building, incredibly technical team, proud that we're able to support them. I don't think we can take too much credit because they're a bunch of like the smartest PhDs in the world. But I think we did a little bit to help, and that's pretty cool.
Wow, a great shout out, and also a really mind-blowing example. So recently I mentioned that the things we're talking about seem to be like less and less unrealistic, although even a year ago this all sounded like a fantasy. So now it's like happening and evolving like from day to day, and it's extremely fast, this process is going. Yeah, and getting back to Aethir, I think it's a great time to drop some teasers and announcements. So could you please go ahead and share, I would say, the next 3 public releases at Aethir that Web3 audience should add to their calendars?
Okay, so I think some really interesting stuff that's coming up. Some of it I can't share, right? So I'm a little bit lame. I would say one of the coolest things that we have actually has to remain a secret until we debut. But I will say within the next maybe month or so, there's going to be some very, very big news that we're announcing that I think will get people just super excited. Like it's gonna blow people's minds. It's game changing, very, very cool. That's about a month away. Stay tuned for that. You'll probably start hearing about it maybe 1 to 2 weeks from now. It's the 27th of August, so maybe early September, some of this news might leak. So stay tuned, but I can't give more information. One of the other things, the second thing that I think is super cool that will be going live within the next maybe month or two is third-party staking, right? Now, remember I spoke about how when a GPU provider wants to come into the network, they need to put a deposit down, right? And think about this. If you want to go and rent the presidential suite of a hotel, your deposit's going to be bigger, isn't it? Right? You'll need a bigger deposit if you want to go into the presidential suite than if you go into the cheapest room. Now, as Aether gets bigger and bigger, more customers want to bring in big fleets of GPUs, right? Now, what that means is they need to put a bigger and bigger deposit into the network. But as deposits get bigger and bigger, you get to a point where you don't really have a huge amount of money sitting on the sidelines, right? If you have $20 million worth of GPUs and you need, for example, to contribute $1 million to Aether's deposit to get your infrastructure in, maybe you don't have $1 million. Maybe you just would use that $1 million to buy more GPUs. Why would you have $1 million just sitting around doing nothing, right? So we need to solve that problem. And this is what we developed third-party staking for. So we can create these big liquidity pools where you or I or anyone in retail, they can contribute Aether to this pool. And then when a big data center, for example, wants to pull all of their 10,000 GPUs into our network, they can borrow that deposit from the pool, right? And they can then share the yield, share the revenue that they generate from their GPU business with the pool. So it's really, really cool and exciting yield backed by real revenue from real businesses out there doing big AI jobs. So it's not just kind of token funny business, right? This is like real interesting yield from actual projects. It's super cool. But third-party staking will go live on our network within the next maybe 1 to 2 months. And that's going to unlock a whole bunch. The initial kind of skeleton of that is live with EigenLayer at the moment. We've got the first AVS live that's not just Ethereum token, it's Aether token. Tens of millions of ATH have been contributed now to that, which is very, very cool. But I would say that's probably the biggest, most exciting thing coming up. Oh, one last thing. We're going to be doing some very cool stuff with GPU RWAs, right? So tokenizing GPUs, fractionalizing access and ownership, creating very interesting structured yield products around that ownership. So stay tuned for some of the stuff that's happening with Plume, some of the stuff that's happening with USDAI and other players in that space where we're integral to that ecosystem.
Wow. So many big things are on the fingertips already and addressing to our audience. So if you guys have any ideas, any expectations of this teaser from Mark mentioned in the beginning, drop it in the comment section. And of course, follow Aether, follow Mark on social, not to miss these mind-blowing updates, mind-blowing innovations, and to stay tuned. And let's speak a little bit more about the expectations of the future, and I would say a midterm, not like some promises, but just Mark, your personal expectations of where do you see Aether in the next 5 years? Maybe you'll be offering mobile first products, operating a quantum compute marketplace, or maybe forming a decentralized consortium with the biggest market players. So what's your vision of the upcoming 5 years?
Your visions sound bigger than mine. I think we need to get you employed as chief strategy officer. I would love a quantum compute marketplace. That would be very, very cool. To be honest, 5 years is a long way away when you look through the lens of AI. Right? I think AI has already changed almost everything about how we do work, how we do school. Anticipating what things are going to look like 5 years from now, I find quite difficult. I will say that we're very focused on continuing to grow the business that kind of runs Aethir, right? We want to continue to onboard more supply, continue to onboard more demand. We've seen extremely good growth in our revenue numbers. We're sitting at around 145 million in annual recurring revenue at the moment, which is over 10 times higher than the next DePIN project. And also, I believe, one of, if not the highest revenue generating project in crypto that doesn't just generate revenue as a result of transactional protocol fees. So a very, very cool milestone, but this is just the beginning for us. I very much expect that to continue on a very kind of interesting trajectory over the next coming kind of year, at the very least, before doing some pretty incredible things in the kind of years that follow that. So I'll say difficult to predict 5 years from now. I think that there's a lot for us to do in the market today, and I think the journey is only just beginning. We'll be bigger and better than you can imagine 5 years from now.
Absolutely, no doubt with that. And I might say that the main difficulty with making some predictions for 5 years with this crazy growth of technologies and AI combined with your passion is that this expectation might happen not in 5 years, but in 1 or 2 or 3 years from now. So, of course, we'll tracking your success, and I believe that we'll be meeting from time to time, like periodically, seeing what's going on, and keeping an eye on it. And with the main part, that's it for today. We came up to the last traditional question. So could you please go ahead and address directly to our audience with some piece of advice or call to action, whatever you find useful for people to hear right now? Take your time.
I think for anyone listening, my biggest advice is one that I've probably shared a couple of times, but that it's never been a better time to start something than now, right? The tools that are out there that can help you launch a small business, create a product that you've always wished to create, get involved in that startup. The technical barriers that used to be there are just lower and lower than they've ever been. The cost of getting access to cutting edge tools is just never been lower. So I would just really encourage people to get curious, right? Listen to people like yourself, understand what's happening in the world. And if you have a passion for something or an interest, go and try and do something. Explore what tools are available for you to use, and then start trying. There's no harm in failing, right? You can fail with a very low cost nowadays. So just get out there and give it a try, because I think I can't remember where I read it, but it was something like there's going to be more millionaires and billionaires created over the next kind of 1 or 2 years than there were in the last 20, right? All because of these little AI tools and things that are helping people start stuff.
Wow, nothing to add. You've heard, guys, everything, and really encouraging ending. The price of the fail is lowering really, and the price of experience you get is actually priceless. So the world is full of opportunities. It's foolish not to use it, and completely agree with you, Mark, and thanks for sharing. And for today, that's it. Thank you very much for joining today. It was a pleasure, and do hope to see you in more episodes.
Thanks very much, Max. It was my pleasure.
And also thanks for our audience for watching us till the end. If you guys have any more questions left after today's discussion, drop it in the comment section. As I said, follow Mark on social, follow Aethir. A lot of big things are coming. Stay tuned, stay curious, and see you in more episodes. Bye-bye, everyone.